Hey, everybody, welcome back to this week's episode of Ohio Business Spotlight. This is a podcast where we, number one, want to highlight businesses that are right here in our local community. We want to talk about the importance of what the entrepreneur does in our community. And we also, aside from promoting that, we want to kind of peel out some nuggets of information where business owners have maybe figured something out. Maybe they can help someone else not recreate the wheel. Maybe they can share some wisdom on how maybe they overcame something that snuck up on them, maybe jumped out of the bushes. So today, our guest is very special and near and dear to me because it's my beautiful daughter. Her name is Leah Stone, and I've known Leah her whole life. And so I know quite a bit about her. But the one thing that I am most proud of is that she is a business owner and her business makes a difference every single day, every single person that she works with. The name of her business is Stepping Stone Counseling and Consulting. I am really excited to welcome you today,
Yeah, I'm
Leah
really excited to
Stone.
be here. Thank you.
It is fun. We've actually did a podcast before, so we're not new to this
No?
rodeo right here. And I just it was a great podcast we did before, but let's talk
Mm.
about this one right here. So, your business, you do counseling, you do it one-on-one, and I want you to talk about first where do you what is the niche where you fit in, because a lot of business owners when they get into a business they get into this broad, great big, they try to swim in the ocean and they really don't have a specialty. And that is something that you identified right off the bat. So let's talk about your niche and maybe a little bit of background on how you decided to
Yeah,
start the
and
business.
I consider myself really lucky that I was able to find my niche so quickly. Part of that does come from my own background, and so to go first into my background, my licensure, my profession is as a social worker. Been a licensed social worker for 10 years now. Most of my work has been in the field of domestic violence and sexual assault advocacy and prevention. And so that work really laid the foundation for me deciding to start this business. I've worked in nonprofits my entire career. I still technically work at a nonprofit because this is a business that I do while I work full time at a nonprofit, continuing to do the advocacy work that I've done. But I saw a really deep need for folks to have a therapy space that really deeply understood and focused on those particular traumas. Unfortunately, what we know is that these aren't uncommon traumas. You know, 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence, 1 in 4 women will experience sexual assault, 1 in 6 men will experience sexual assault. So these are hard things to talk about, not always the easiest and lightest topic of a podcast. But that foundation and that background is important because it led me to really wanting to create a space for folks that had that really specific specialization in therapy. There are so many fantastic nonprofits out there that do this work, but as you can imagine, they're often on long wait lists. They often have barriers that make it hard for folks to be able to get in right away because they don't have unlimited funding. So, what I do is try to make myself as available and accessible as possible to those folks that have experienced these kinds of traumas and are looking to recover, move forward, start the healing journey, wherever they might be in that process.
When did you know that you wanted, because you did a good job of kind of outlining your background and identifying, you did a really good job of identifying the niche that you fill because it's been a passion of yours for so long. When did you decide, number one, when did you decide that you wanted to get this side hustle on, number one? And number two, as you started getting this side hustle on, what are some of the things that tripped you up? And if you were successful in overcoming that, how
Yeah.
did you overcome it?
Well, I'll say that Overcoming is always a process. As a therapist, I always say things are a process. And so to get to that point, I realized I wanted to do this as a part-time job after a couple of years of working a little bit more on a systems level, working not directly with survivors, but actually with the people who work with survivors. So my full-time work is doing training for those advocates that are in the field, working directly with survivors in the courts and in hospitals and in shelters. And I love that work. I love that job, but I so deeply missed working one-on-one with people, working with the folks that have experienced these lived traumas and also are so resilient. I count myself really blessed to get the chance to work alongside folks who have overcome so much in their life and have such resilience. So for me, getting into this work, I decided I wanted to because I missed that piece of it. And to add a little bit of additional information about my niche, I am a very specific kind of therapist. I'm not just a trauma therapist. I'm what's known as an EMDR, or eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapist. You and I could do a literal entire podcast just on that topic. We will not do that to any of us, but this is a really niche and really specialized form of therapy that I've been trained in and have been practicing for many years that allows folks to process trauma in a way that is not as overwhelming as some other ways of processing trauma. And in fact, there's lots of studies and research that show that this practice actually can help folks process trauma much more quickly without it being as overwhelming as some past historical treatments of trauma can sometimes be. So I knew again that there is this gap. Not all trauma therapists or EMDR therapists. So I knew that there was that gap to fill. My challenge is that, and this is again where I say it's a process because it is a lifelong challenge. You know me, but this might be a shock to you. I sometimes have a hard time with taking on more than what I can always manage in one. Don't laugh. That's not, I know that's not, yeah. Well, when I think about, and I'm going right back into the piece of, what are some stumbling blocks that I found? As a human being, I struggle to not take on too much at one time. I have a tendency to want to say yes to everything and everyone and not turn down an opportunity and think that if I do turn down an opportunity, then that opportunity is never going to come back around again. Again, I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of early business owners feel and have that same fear that if I don't say yes to everything, if I say no one time or to one thing, then it's never going to come back around again. And what I am trying to put into practice and learning is that I am the best version of myself as a therapist when I show up with my cup full and when I know what is my lane, what is my area, and when somebody needs somebody else, some additional support, or needs more of a community. And so something that I found is saying no when that's grounded in what your goals are and also what it is that your mission is does not have to be a bad thing, but it can actually open you up to saying yes to more things that align with what it is that your mission is.
I love what you said because so often, so the struggle to say yes that everything that comes at you, I think,
Right.
is something that probably a lot of entrepreneurs recognize. I love what you said, though. A lot of people would say, okay, I just got to prioritize all these cars coming at me. I got to decide which ones I can help and which ones I can, maybe need to defer or refer somewhere else. But I love what you said. You said, really, the way for you to decide is how can you position yourself to give the best care, how you can be the best you. I want people to take away from that right there. I want people to glean that nugget right there because that's not a common answer. I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that right there. So let me ask you this right here. Let's roll back to the beginning because I really wanted to dig into some of the startup stuff. And a common startup thing is Okay, we do all the paperwork, we get the website up and going, and we hang the shingle and we flip the open sign, and we're just sitting there, twiddling our thumbs, waiting, for clients.
Yep.
How much of that did you experience, number one? And what did you do with some of that time right there that either helped you deal with that or maybe bring in business?
Yeah, that's such a hard time. I remember feeling so angsty and anxious waiting. So I remember last year was early last year is when I started my business, and there was a solid 4 or 5 months of having, a call here and there, having a little bit of traffic, and then nothing, like no appointments, no intake scheduled, a phone call that I would get maybe a little too excited about, and the person was like, person is maybe a little too excited, and I felt really frustrated with that. What I did with that time, well, I'll back up and say my first instinct was to say, well, what if I lowered my price? What if I
Mm,
dropped my
mm,
price? And, as I said before, I have a specialization in this kind of therapy, and I was already kind of on the lower end of that cost. And I was like, well, what if I drop it more? And my husband said to me in a I remember the exact conversation we had when he said this, and he said, "You're devaluing yourself before you even get anybody, before things even start. You need to wait, you need to give it time, and you need to allow people who, do need your services and value the services that you have to offer. You need to wait for those people to come to you and go out and look for those people." And so I said, "You're right." And I don't like saying that to him, but he was. And I did. I ended up doing a bit more marketing, actually partnered with a company that I was able to do some marketing with for a really affordable cost. I also was able to just reach out and network within my community. So I thought, who are the organizations, who are the places in the community where I think that my niche is going to be really needed. And I went back to and thought about my experiences with faith communities, how oftentimes faith communities are such a huge support to people experiencing trauma, but people fear telling people in their faith community that they're experiencing abuse, experiencing violence in the home, that they have a trauma history. And so I started to reach out to those faith communities that I have a connection to and have experiences with, and started to say, hey, I really want to support your staff in being able to support survivors in your community. Can we do some training? And can I have conversations with you about what that looks like for you all? And can I be a resource and a support for you? And so that ended up being a place where I could start making some connections, getting some referrals. And again, it even kind of more solidified my niche as being this really particular population, or one of them that I work with, really helped me to be patient and not devalue myself before, I even started.
Well, I picked two things out of there that I really liked. Number one, the relatability of, getting everything ready, the open signs flipped and waiting. There's probably not a business owner in the some 25 podcasts we've done. There's probably not a business owner that hasn't experienced, okay, when's that first client walking through the door? But I love two things. I want to compliment you on this right here because I think this is important. A lot of times, and on several occasions during our conversation, you've really crafted and a lot of people would call it an elevator speech. A lot of people really have a difficult time explaining, number one, exactly what they do. And number two, who is their ideal client? So you've done a very good job of that. I have to believe that that's contributed to. But the other thing that I like that when you started to kind of not panic but wonder, okay, I know they're my customers out there. I love the advice Stone gave you. Don't devalue yourself. A lot of entrepreneurs can be stuck in that right there. Am I charging too much? So that was good. I love how you dove back into a community that you were familiar with, that you already had some street cred with, and that you knew some need was going to come from there. That is that's a skill that that's a well that isn't oftentimes drawn from where it really is. People don't recognize that people refer business to people that they've been in relationship with. And that's
Right.
one of the things that you identified. And I'm certain as the business picked up, that probably contributed it to it a lot as far as it goes. So now the machine's running, you're taking care of people. A lot of times I hear people struggle in their business with process. And I know you and I have talked about some process that you need to. How did you discriminate between, because when you open up a business, people are always trying to sell you stuff. You get plenty of emails saying, how did you discriminate between the processes that you knew would make you efficient and maybe a process that sounded good, but when you dug into it, boy, I don't know if that's going to help me there. How did you discern?
Yeah, this is where I really credit those folks that have been in the field before me and those other therapists and other community mental health folks that have been doing this work because I want and really need to use a product that has a lot of integrity. As a therapist, I am beholden to laws and my
Wow.
state licensing board that says, you need to be ensuring protection of protected health information. And so I do get a lot of emails about that. And I really relied on and talked with the folks that I already knew were doing this in the community, were specifically doing either private practice or had done in the past, and asked them their thoughts. I created comparison sheets, both with costs, but also what these platforms were able to offer me. What are some things that I could do with? What are some things that I could do without, just based on what I knew my income would likely be? But I really talked with folks and I really talked with folks I trusted about what they've used in the past. And to piggyback off of something that you were saying earlier, and just to add to this, I think that this is something that any business owner could really use to support them, and something that I learned from having done nonprofit work for so long is you have to have, whether you're a nonprofit or not, an underlying mission to your work. And that, to me, it is part of the elevator pitch, but it's the why behind what you're doing. And if you don't have that why settled, whether your business is something completely different from mental health, something completely different from this field or not, if you don't have the why and the foundational values behind what you're doing, it's going to be really hard to make those decisions about who is the best product to go with or what is the best platform to use, because you're kind of just going to be figuring out things based on no real direction of here's where I need to go. And I knew, again, protection of health information and integrity within that product was really important to me, and that helped me guide my decisions.
Boy, there's four things here as you were talking. I'm sitting here thinking, oftentimes people see the title, like they may see this title right here and they go, I don't know what I might be able to learn from someone who has a counseling business, but I would challenge. I've identified four things you've said when it comes to how you're going to spend your time. I think that your answer was a notch above prioritizing, because everybody really does need to prioritize. But you said, how can I position myself so that I'm giving the best me to my client? That's number one. Number two, I love how you said all right, I got to really start digging in and pumping the handle on this thing to bring clients in. You went to a familiar market where you knew there was a need, and those relationships, you already had credibility. And then this last thing, I just can't help but point out that a business owner can glean so much from what you said, because so oftentimes, Eric Horseman said it on an earlier episode, that we have to be willing to stand on the shoulders of giants. We have to be willing you're my daughter, so you've heard me say this 10 times, if not 100 times. You want to take advantage of learning from mistakes someone else has already made. So
Right.
you had the wisdom to stand on the shoulder of giants, ask them, hey, what type of processes, what type of products are you using? And I said there was four, but unfortunately that one of them slipped my mind. But those three things right there, if business owners paid attention, I know what the fourth thing was. You're able to explain what you do to someone who might just be a peer or a colleague or
Mhm.
someone who may be a potential client. You're able to give a really clear, and we haven't spent much time on here, and we're coming to the end of this podcast right here. And in a pretty short, concise way, you were able to explain what you did so that someone understood it and could then plug you into people that you could help. A lot of business owners right there could take away from those four things right there. Leah, we've enjoyed having you. We always like to ask this of a guest, and you asked me for if there was anything I needed to know ahead of time, and I always mean to tell people this right here, but it's not going to trip you up because you don't need to answer it right now. But we want you to think you do business in so many different arenas, not just where you're at. Locally, if you can think of three businesses that you would like to see on this podcast, that number one, you want to see promoted, and number two, you just happen to know the leadership of that entity and you know that they could contribute. If you can think of any now, I will ask you to email them to me because I want to put them on my list so that we can have them on. Can you think of anybody right here, right now?
Oh gosh. You really should start telling people this ahead of time.
Mhm.
There are some folks, and I'm trying to think.
What about the place that you work out at? You do you do I can't think of the name what it's called right now, but that place right there, you've really become an integral part of that community, and it's a very tight-knit community because I got a chance to meet a lot of them when I helped you move. What's
Yeah.
the name of that place right there?
Yeah. So thank you for helping me. I was like my
Yeah, well,
brain
it's
went
one
away.
it's a hard question, and it's one that I was
Yeah.
thinking of.
Well, and this is actually a great one to highlight. So I do um, aerial dance and
That's the word.
fitness through a place called Femme Fatale Dayton. Highly recommend. They have such a fantastic leadership, but also be just a really wonderful community there. And like truly, community is the word that I can think of because the space is the name suggests that the place is maybe just for women and maybe even just for women who like look a certain way or present a certain way. This is a space for everybody. If you are somebody that likes to move your body and maybe wants to move your body in non-traditional ways, if you're not a runner or if you are a runner and you just want something fun to do that isn't that, this is a space where you can take so many different kinds of aerial dance, of floor dance, so many different kinds of activities that aren't just going to the gym, and it's so motivating. So I would highly recommend. They've actually for the last, gosh, something like 4 or 5 years won or been a finalist on Dayton's Best as far as local
Nice, nice.
businesses go.
Well,
Yeah, so
make sure you email me their information.
I will.
I saw the community when we were getting you guys moved in, they were there,
Mhm.
and, I was impressed with it, so I wanna thank you so much. I never take for granted you as being my daughter. I know how busy you are, I know how passionate you are, and that's why I knew that you would be a good fit here. I knew there would be things that people could take away, so I'm so happy to have you here today. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. And everybody noticed, and I didn't bring it on the front side, and he's probably going to kill me, but we're missing my partner in crime, Tony Miltenberger, today. I want to make sure that everybody hops on his YouTube channel, follow the lead, follow to lead the number two. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. That's where this is going to be. There's going to be some great information that's going to come back from this right here. We look forward to seeing everybody here back next Thursday. Thank you for being around. Leah, thank you again. I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks.